Okay, folks, welcome to Unconventional Paths for Healing Cancer. I've got a very special guest today with me. Her name is Teri Davis Newman. Teri is the one and only survivor of a high-grade serous cell ovarian carcinoma when it's recurred as a
peritoneal carcinomatosis.
Okay, you say that way better than I do. Welcome,
I've had
Teri.
practice.
Yes. Teri, you're also an activist, I believe, for natural cures and people's right to choose the treatment that's best for them, and also have written a book about your experience and the knowledge you've gained along your journey. Can you maybe elaborate on your particular cancer and what it means? Because I understand it has something to do with the BRCA1 gene, is that correct?
I am a carrier of the BRCA1 genetic defect, as is my father, his mother, my sister. My sister was diagnosed with ovarian cancer in January of 2015, and she called me in late September of 2015 and said that she had just tested positive for the BRCA genetic defect and that our father was also positive and that I should get tested too. Of course, the day they stuck the needle in my arm, I already had cancer and didn't know it. But I had the surgery, and I was diagnosed with the same cancer that killed her 90 days to the day after she died. So the book that I was writing started out to raise awareness of the BRCA1 genetic defect because it's carried by so many people like Christina Applegate or Angelina Jolie, many more people than they had originally thought. And I did not expect her story to become my story. It never occurred to me that I could have cancer, but 90 days to the day after she died from it, I was diagnosed.
Oh, that's incredible.
So,
did you have some surgery? Is that correct? Or was it a biopsy?
I was having preventative surgery. No, I was having preventative surgery, a hysterectomy and removal of my fallopian tubes and ovaries to try and prevent the cancer, and actually it revealed the cancer it was supposed to prevent. It was too late. The day they tested me for BRCA1, I already had cancer. It didn't go to stage 3 ovarian cancer in 3 months. There's no way. So no. I already had it. Just didn't know.
Now now I understand probably due to your sister's experience, and maybe you can elaborate on that, but you refused to do chemotherapy, and I understand that you had a fair bit of pressure from your doctors to do so. What was your whole thoughts on that?
Fair bit of pressure is the understatement of the year. They did everything but hold a gun to my head to try to force me to have chemo. They told me wonderful things like, you'll die vomiting feces, or better go home and get your obituary up to date. And my personal favorite, here's the phone number for hospice. You're going to need it. Very sensitive, very compassionate. I was touched, seriously, touched by their compassion and understanding.
Yeah, great bedside manner.
No, after they got the surgery, like, oh, we got all the cancer, and now we have to do chemo. I'm like, well, you just told me you got all the cancer. Why would I do chemo for cancer it's not over there, considering how damaging it is to the entire body? And they're like, well, you have to have it. I'm like, why? And they're like, well, it'll come back. I'm like, according to what I read, it's going to come back 90% of the time whether they have chemo or not. So I think I'll just wait. And that's when they really put the pressure on. Come to discover that they buy the drugs for your cancer chemo cocktail for $5,000 or $6,000, and they resell it to you or your insurance company for $75,000 to $100,000. They pumped $2.2 million worth of that poison into my sister, and she's dead. I haven't had a drop of chemo. I'm almost 4 years post-diagnosis.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. And what would be their hope with giving you chemo at that point anyways? Would it give you, a couple more months of horrible life kind of thing, or?
Oh, no, they like to tell you the next one's the cure. They chemoed my sister when she was in hospice. I mean, they had put her in hospice, told her she was going to die, but they thought, well, we'll try one more chemo. And she died the next day. The chemo caused vomiting that caused her esophagus to rupture. She bled to death in front of both of my parents, who were in their 80s. So I'm sure that was a wonderful day they'll never forget.
Jeez, that's horrible.
Who chemos somebody when they're in hospice, for God's sake? I mean, who does that?
That's terrible, yeah.
Well, I mean, what was the point of that?
Yeah, no kidding. What would you say now? After you kind of refused chemotherapy, was it difficult to get cooperation to get like scans and blood work done, or did you have at least one good person in your corner?
No, it was pretty much impossible. I couldn't find the oncologist. If you don't want to buy their poison, then you can hit the road, and I figure you'll come back when you get more afraid of dying, which I haven't reached that point yet. So the only doctor I see is my primary doctor, who has been wonderful. She's been with me every step of the way. Of course, she's been my doctor for 15 years, and I'll never trust another doctor but her. But she has just been amazing. She's ordered my scans, done my blood work, and really stepped up when all the oncologist did was scream chemo, chemo, chemo.
Yeah, you
So
really
I owe her a great debt of gratitude.
Yeah, you really need to have that one person in your corner, don't you? Yeah. So, and then how did
I would never have been able to do this without her, because she was there when I needed particular medications that that weren't medically appropriate, really, but she gave them to me anyway because I asked for them. Like I asked for metformin, even though I'm not a diabetic, to try and starve the cancer cells.
Yeah.
And she prescribed it to me, it was extremely helpful that she believed in me and that she was willing to work with me on this, because she's the only one that would. The rest of them were essentially, if you don't want to buy the chemo, you can die. See you later. It's been a slice. And that was literally their attitude. They were horrible, just absolutely horrible.
Now, you're, now there's, I find that such a conflict of interest that, the oncologists, can buy the chemo drugs and then sell it. Of course, they're making so much money off it.
And they keep the difference.
Yes.
It's the most profitable treatment in medicine, and they are legally allowed to keep the money. And it's outrageous. If they took the profit out of it, then they would look for a different thing. But but they're this close to a cure. Every time you turn on, we're this close to a cure. They have no desire to cure cancer. Here's the thing. Let's think about this. Big Pharma profits $200 billion a year, every year, from cancer treatment. Okay, so what's a cure do for them? That goes away like a puff of smoke. Okay, they also financed all these nice new cancer. I'm just getting warmed up. They also financed all these wonderful new cancer treatment centers of America that will get shuttered if there was a cure. You'll have to retrain an entire branch of medicine. What are the odds that they want to cure? There was a meeting with Goldman Sachs, and I actually have the article on the meeting, where they were complaining that because they came up with a drug that cured hepatitis C, they only had $4 billion in profits last year, where they had 15 million the year before, because more people were sick. And if anybody, why would they want to cure? There's no money in a healthy population, none whatsoever.
Yeah, no, it's quite sad, really. I read something about that too, and they were literally, there was one line something that it isn't a profitable model or something, and it was like, wow, you're dealing with people's lives, and it's quite disgusting.
I don't care about that.
How did you find out about GcMAF, and had you looked into other options as well at that point?
I hadn't really looked at anything. They said that I would die when the cancer returned. They said I would die in 6 months, and I was pretty much prepared to do that, because I took the attitude that if I was going to die, then so be it. But I wasn't going to spend what were going to be the last 6 months of my life bawled, vomiting, sick, with my entire life being one doctor appointment to the next. I decided if I was going to die, I'd die like I lived, at 100 miles an hour with my hair on fire. Nothing else would matter. And I'm also a woman of faith, so I said a prayer, and I prayed to the God that I have believed in all of my life. And I said, Heavenly Father, if it is your will that I survive this, show me the way. I'm not asking to be cured. Throw down the breadcrumbs. I'll do the rest. Just show me the way. If it is your will, show me the way. The next day in my email, I got an email from a dentist friend of mine I hadn't talked to in a couple of years, that said, hey, have you ever heard of GcMAF? And I'm like, whoa. And then I started researching it, which led me to David Noakes. And the rest, as they say, is history. David was kind enough to provide me with the GcMAF that saved my life. And it's a travesty what happened to him, because GcMAF cures so much more than cancer. It cures HIV, from what I understand. It cures Crohn's disease, all kinds of autoimmune, psoriasis, eczema. It just does an amazing amount of good. And I've always believed that the immune system was the key to health, because throughout history, sickness has not been a mystery. Health is a mystery, because there's so much to make you sick. They definitely need to harness your immune system to fight diseases, because I do believe it's the cure to all of humankind's maladies.
Well, you know what? There's more and more research now to back that up, and that's I really like the way you put that. That's very, very cool. For those that'll be listening that don't know what GcMAF is, can you explain that in your words? I know you're well studied on the subject.
It is a glycoprotein macrophage activating factor. Macrophages are special cells that you have. They eat bad cells. It's called phagocyzing, where they grab it with their long sticky tentacles, because they look kind of like a cephalopod, an octopus, and they grab the cancer cell and they eat it. But cancer cells and viruses secrete a substance called nagalase. Nagalase paralyzes your macrophages, which keeps them from going after the bad cells. GcMAF, when ingested, either topically, sublingually, or injected, will reactivate your macrophage. Basically, it walks up to him, kicks him in the butt, and says, "Hey, we've got a cancer." And I'm like, "What? Cancer? We're on it." And then they go and they do their thing. I would not be alive today if it wasn't for GcMAF. It is an unbelievable miracle for mankind.
Yeah.
And
it's been
David Noakes is a hero. Yes, it was. It was discovered in the 1990s by Dr. Nobuo Yamamoto, whom I believe is still alive, even though he's in his 90s. He teaches at Temple University in Pennsylvania, and he is the father of GcMAF. He put it in the papers, and the papers are all publicly available for anybody who wanted to manufacture it. It's a fairly simple process if you know anything about chemistry and have a clean lab. It's not a hard thing to do.
And now, what made you believe that GcMAF was your best choice? Was it just a leap of faith?
It was a leap of faith. I read the science on it. It sounded reasonable to me. I have hard science education, so it sounded reasonable to me. I'm like, And it was literally my only option. It was either try this or just lay down and die. I thought, well, I'm going to try this. Maybe we'll see what happens.
Yeah, the interesting thing, you hear, you read so much stuff. There's a lot of obviously lobbying and things put up on the internet to kind of poo-poo, to use a real fancy name or word for they basically discredit GcMAF, and say there's no science behind it. Well, there's, like we both know, there's 150
tremendous amount of science behind it.
Yeah,
but there's an awful lot of counterfeit GcMAF. You have to know what you're looking for. You have to go to a reputable place to get it. And it is not easy to find because it's an unapproved medication. And worse than that, it's an unapproved medication that works.
Yeah, and it's a pretty much natural thing too. I guess there's some argument could be said that it maybe shouldn't have to be a licensed.
It's a vitamin D binding protein. Every healthy person has GcMAF already in their system. No one's allergic to it. No one should react to it. If it kills off too many, the worst thing that can happen is if it kills off too many disease cells all at once. The lysing of it can give you flu-like symptoms called a Herxheimer reaction, which happens a lot with antibiotics too if you had a serious illness. So, but it's an absolutely harmless substance. No one's allergic to it, and it's miraculous. I started putting it when I started taking it for my cancer after David's issues with the law and First Immune being shut down. I had to find another source that was topical, and I started putting it on my husband and my father's now almost 90, and I started putting the cream on him twice a week and on my husband twice a week. My husband used to get 3 or 4 colds every year, and the flu every year, whether he got the flu shot or not. He hasn't been sick since I started putting it on. And my dad hasn't had so much as a sniffle in 2 years. and neither has my stepmom. They're both. If you didn't know they were in their 80s, you'd never know. My dad says he hasn't felt as good in years.
And when you put it on topically, where do you apply it?
You apply it to your lymph node areas, which would be from the side, on the sides of your neck, all through your clavicle, the underside of your upper arm, and where your legs meet your body and behind your knees. Those are serious lymph node points. You can also run it straight down your sternum.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Because you have all kinds of lymph nodes too. In your clavicle area, you have them in your neck, under your arms, in your groin, behind your knees. You have them all over your body, but those are where they're concentrated.
Right.
So you just rub it in, and it works. It works amazingly well.
Oh, fantastic! And that's from GcMAF Plus, isn't it?
Yes, that's where I get my creams and stuff. They are amazing people.
Yeah. Where are they based out of?
I believe they're in New Zealand.
New Zealand, yeah. Okay. Very cool. Now, after you started taking GcMAF originally, how long before you started feeling or seeing a result?
I started feeling better almost right away. Like the next day, I felt better. I had more energy. I started feeling really just more like myself, less sick and more like me. And then my first MRI after I started this, the tumors were shrinking. So I knew it was working, and believe me, I was like, I couldn't believe it. But
yeah, because your particular cancer, was one that hardly ever
very aggressive.
Shrinks, and
it's very aggressive.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy.
It's the only weed and seed cancer there is. Once the tumors reach 3 centimeters, they start spraying the peritoneum with other cancer cells, and they come up and it's just like little mushrooms, how they come up in a field. They just have little tumors popping up everywhere, and they double in size every 6 to 8 weeks. This is the only cancer that doesn't kill you by invading other organs and shutting down their function. It kills you with explosive growth that crushes out your visceral organ function, like your bowel, your bladders, your kidneys. It crushes it because there's no more space.
No.
Because it grows so fast. Yeah. So it's a bad one. It's the most aggressive. The only chance you have to get rid of it is if they do the surgery and you happen to get lucky with the chemotherapy and it never comes back, because once it comes back is peritoneal carcinomatosis, which is what they call it when it recurs. That's it. It's just a matter of time. You might last for second, third, fourth round chemo. You might last a while on the maintenance medication. If you're a BRCA1, you might last a while on a PARP inhibitor, but eventually you're going to die from it. The only chance you have is if it never comes back, and that doesn't usually happen. It recurs in about 90 to 92% of the people, or women, not people, women.
Are you cancer-free now?
I am very close to cancer-free now. I had a setback, and but I expect to be cancer-free by the end of the year.
I see. Oh, that's great. And you were, and this was 2016 or something, wasn't it, when you were diagnosed? Is that right?
I was diagnosed February 18th of 2016.
Oh, that's great. I mean,
so it's been 3.5 years.
That's awesome.
Since I was diagnosed. Yeah, well, I wasn't supposed to see 2017, so I'm not unhappy with my progress.
No. So let's talk a little bit about now. I know you're, obviously you mentioned that you feel that David Noakes saved your life there, and from what I understand, he was kind enough initially to supply you with some of that.
Yes.
Which was very generous, and
it was exceptionally generous of him. I owe him my life. I would not be here if it wasn't for David. I'm certain of that. I owe David Noakes my life. I would be dead.
Yeah. And what do you think about this? Them being shut down? Is it just politics?
It's a big government, big pharma. It's politics, and it's big pharma protecting their profits. I mean, they don't care how many people die of this. They just want their money.
Yeah.
And they have no interest in a cure. A cure doesn't fit their business model. You know, it's like, I have to laugh. They go, oh, well, when they find a cure, they're going to give it away for free. Sure, they will. And they're going to close $1 billion charity like the American Cancer Society. You know, what are those Komen women running for? It's ridiculous. It's absurd. It defies logic. Of course they're not. You know, they aren't even remotely interested in a cure. The cancer drugs they use now for frontline chemo are the same drugs they have been using since 1979. Yeah, it's a 40-year-old it's a 40-year-old protocol, and they're still using it. That's their frontline cancer treatment. So how bad do they really want to cure if they're using a 40-year-old drug?
Yeah. No, I mean, you know, you like you say, you hear every day. You know, you can look in the papers or the internet, and there's always something. Oh yeah, we're just, you know, a few.
It's just propaganda. They have these new drugs now that after they go through all their expensive chemo from the 1970s that they want you to take. For example, they have like Keytruda, which is a immunotherapy drug. Well, it's about $20,000 a month. PARP inhibitors like Rubraca, $15,000 a month is what this stuff costs. They want to sell it to you because it's not as profitable as systemic chemo, but they make money from it.
Yeah,
so that is exactly what they're about. Nothing more, nothing less. They are protecting their profits. They don't want to cure this. If they wanted to cure it, they could have. But there's no way. There's no money in a healthy population. None.
Now, when you started taking GcMAF, what kind of protocol did you follow? And was it did you do a bunch of adjunctive things with it?
No, I did. I stuck to the diet, which was no sugar, low carb, kind of a keto / Atkins type diet. I ate salmon that I strongly dislike regularly. And I took the medication as David told me to, and I'm blessed that it worked. And it's worked on a lot of people. There's a lot of Facebook groups now with people that it's worked on, where there's a lot of people that swear by it.
Yeah. Have you
it's pretty amazing stuff.
Have you met people or talked to people yourself that have similar stories?
Yes, people. I put my contact information in my book, and people contact me all the time from it. And I promised God I would never turn anybody away who asked me for help, and I've kept that promise. So when they ask me about it, I do my very best to try and help them. Mm-hmm. I'm not a licensed medical practitioner, but I do have knowledge and experience that I can share.
Well, you know what? When you get put into a situation like this, there's two ways people seem to go. Either they listen to exactly what the doctors in the white coats tell them, but then, you know, when you're told you have a death sentence, well, then, you know, you might as well look outside the box and see if you can find something else. A
surprising amount of people don't do that. They listen to their doctors as their doctors cheerfully poison them all the way to the grave because they're too afraid of dying to defy their doctors. They're too afraid of dying to save their own lives, and that is a shame because people are like, oh, doctors, they're so smart. Well, they're not. They just have good memories. You don't have to be all that smart to be a doctor. You just have to be able to memorize the crap they feed you in medical school. And now they have the standard of care, which is what they're all required to follow to keep from being sued, which is A happens, do B, do C. Nothing works the same on two different people. If it did, we'd all have the same DNA. We'd all be identical. But they have this cookie cutter medicine, and they have forgotten that medicine is an art as well as a science. And things that work on one person may not work on another. For example, if you give me the painkiller Dilaudid, you might as well have given me methamphetamine. I will run constantly. I won't be able to sit still. Mm-hmm. And not everything works the same way on everybody. It's just, there's so many different DNA combinations. Nothing could possibly work the same way, but they assume that it does, which is the entire philosophy behind the standard of care, which is crazy. It's crazy. Yeah, no,
I couldn't agree more with you there because I wrote an article recently about, different, exactly that, somebody with colon cancer, with metastasis to the liver, adenocarcinoma, you have the exact same cancer, but your biology is different. So, there was Dr. Munez in Tijuana at the San Diego clinic. He had two of us patients that were, had the same thing. And there was probably 12 different things that he had us doing, but 7 were the same and 5 were the things were completely different because of our biology. But down there, they look at you as an individual and what your individual needs are and where where your weaknesses are and that sort of thing. So, yeah, I'm totally with you on that one. A methodology that'll work for you will not necessarily work for me, even if we have the same thing.
Exactly.
And that's, yeah. So that's something. Yeah, I wonder. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about how we can spur on a movement to get this regulated somehow, or is it just too big of a part?
I think it's overregulated already. Regulation is a problem, not lack of it. We need to make things available to people. President Trump did a great thing when he signed the Right to Try Act, which gives you access to experimental medications if you have a terminal condition. That was a big step in the right direction. But as long as the big pharma companies are making huge profits on chemo, then there's not going to be a cure. I don't care how much they spout off about it on TV about how we're this close. We're not. We're not any closer than we were. We might as well be in 1979 because they're still using the same medication.
Well, and when they, just think of all the cancer hospitals, the scientists, the people. I mean, it's
out of work, shuttered.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
yeah. It's a huge business. It is a 200 billion. Just big profits. Just big pharma's profits alone are $200 billion a year. The American Cancer Society, they're supposed to spend all this money in research. Where's the $1 trillion in donations they've collected over the last 6 years? Where's that money? Where's my cure? Where is it? Where's the money? Where's the Komen money? Where'd all this money go? Where's the billions of dollars that the United States government has given to the National Institute of Health for the cure? Where'd all this money go? Where's my cure? We're still using the same stuff as 40 years ago? What's happening here? Something's wrong here.
Yeah, I know. I think we've been barking up the wrong tree for a long time with all this. And
it's not even that. It's just total and abject corruption. I smell the fetid odor of rotting rodent and all of these cancer cures and cancer research because they're not researching a cure. They're just spinning their wheels.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard to believe from a humanitarian point of view, and sometimes when I say exactly what you're saying, I get criticized brutally and harshly by some people, but more people than not nowadays are starting to realize the corruption.
That's true.
And so I mean that's encouraging, but it is it is tough. I read something that the profit margin on of the pharmaceutical companies is 42%, which is way more than any other sector. Oil and gas.
I know, right?
Yeah, so they're way too powerful. It's crazy.
I agree, and they're not going to do anything to upset their money-making apple cart. You can bet on that. So people are going to have to come to the realization that they are responsible for their own health, responsible for their own cure, and responsible for their own choices. Otherwise, they're just going to keep puttering along, getting poisoned to death while their oncologists pat their hand and go, "The next one's going to be the cure, honey."
Yeah,
but it's not.
No, sure enough. So now. I haven't spoken to David for probably a week and a half or so. I don't. Are you in contact with him fairly regularly still?
We email each other back and forth. David is a great human being. If they, I'm hoping that they don't extradite him to France. He's been punished enough. This was his life's work. He did so much good, and I consider the entire thing to be such a travesty. The way he was treated, that I can't even put it into words. I lack the eloquence. It's just that awful.
Yeah, no, it's really horrible, and what's and then Lynn, of course, too. I guess
I know Lynn is a wonderful person. She's also a healer. The whole thing is just a travesty.
Yeah, no, I'm I've been talking to David, and I'm putting together a treatment to do a documentary on it, which I'll be presenting to a friend of mine in the film business. And but at any rate, yeah, no, that story has to be told. It has to get out there. We need to find a way to support him.
To help. If there's
Yes.
anything I can do to help, I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm there. Count me in, because I'm a firm believer in this. I wouldn't be alive but for David. I wouldn't be alive but for GcMAF. So I'm a big believer in it. And anything that I can do to help promote this and to end the scourge of chemotherapy, I am willing to do.
Yeah, well, that's great. We'll definitely call on you. Now tell me a little bit more in detail about your book. And
it was essentially I wrote down what I felt when things were happening to me, how I felt about this. It's diary of a crazed cancer patient. Is really what it is. It's just they made me so mad. It's basically a 300-page temper tantrum of how can you treat me like this? How can you do this? It has research in it, and it is a burning, flaming, red-hot missile of truth.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have read it, have contacted me with it and from it, because my information's in the book, as I mentioned earlier. But it's been amazing to be able to help other people the way that David helped me by making them aware. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power, and the sharing of knowledge, the sharing of things that help. It is the only way we're going to ever win this. We have to share knowledge with each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is what makes the internet so great, because you can share all kinds of knowledge. You just have to. But the bad thing about the internet is you don't know what's necessarily true and what might not be. So that makes it a little more difficult.
Well, that is true. I found that you really have to dig a little deeper than just
research is.
Yeah, and look at the science. The right science articles and things like that. And yeah, you can't take anything at face value these days. That's for sure.
So true.
Well, that's cool. Now, I noticed as I was doing a little bit of research on you and your situation, I came across a blog somewhere, and I noticed that you had a site that was GcMAFcancercure.com, but I don't think is still valid.
It's not up anymore. My web hosting account was hacked into and the site was taken down, and I have not reconstructed it yet. I'm gonna put some sort of website up at some point, but not right this minute. I'm busy working on the sequel to the first book to try and because what happened. I mean, I put that out 2 years ago, and it wasn't. I wanted to wait until the story was over to put the book out, but the information was so important that I thought I should put it out anyway, even though the story hadn't ended. So the next book is actually the sequel to the first book. Like, what happened? Tell me the rest. So I'm working on it. It's I'm hoping to have it finished by the end of the year and out too, and then maybe I'll combine them in a 2-volume set or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
See what happens.
Well, you know what I mean. As coming out of such a horrible situation and turning it into a gift is very admirable, and I think that's fantastic what you're doing. And I know you've helped a lot of people, and David speaks very highly of you and your contribution.
I think very highly of David. So, I don't think I could say enough nice things about David. I owe him my life. I would do anything for him. I would do anything to help him.
Oh, good.
He's like, he has. I would not be here if it wasn't for him. I'm certain of that. Absolutely certain.
Yeah.
So I owe him my life.
Well, this is great. I do really appreciate you, sharing your story with me. And are there any other things anything else that you want to kind of cover or let me know about today?
Just the people need to seek out their own answers, because everybody that you see has an angle. How do I put this? You can go see, doctors don't necessarily have your best interests at heart. You have to do your own research. You have to be responsible for your own health. You have to take responsibility for your own life.
Yeah. And
you can't expect somebody else to do it.
Sure enough. I think, I mean, I think obviously like the doctors and scientists and even the people that work, I don't want to, even in the pharmaceuticals, I mean, it's really at the top where all the money is, where the corruption is. I mean, I don't think the average pharmacist that's working, doing things are bad people, and doctors mean well, but their whole education system has been ever since the Flexner report in 1910 or something. Once they could patent medicine and make profits off of it, that's why we go in and everything's a prescription now, and of course those. And there are good pharmauticals out there too. There's no question. There's things that are being repurposed now, or the patents have run out, and now like I think you mentioned in an email to me that fenbenzidol, which is the pinworm dewormer, and there's the human version fenbenzidol, a couple others, but that
fenbenzidol is no longer manufactured.
Which one?
You can't get it. It's Fenbenzidol is no longer manufactured. They bought the patent on it too in 2011. They stopped making it. Now, if you want now, in order to get it, it's $500 a pill, and you have to go to a compounding pharmacy, which is insane.
I know.
But you can still buy the Fenbenzidol for $11 for a month's supply.
I know.
Insane.
I did that. I went to, but they made it to, or here in Canada. I don't know if it's the same in the States, but they've made it so that you have to have a prescription. So it was kind of funny. I went into a veterinarian.
You've always had to have a prescription for Fenbenzidol.
What's that?
You've always had to have a prescription. You've always had to have a prescription for Fenbenzidol, but never for Fenbenzidol. Because Fenbenzidol, while it is essentially the same drug, is approved for animals. Whereas Fenbenzidol, you need a prescription for because it's approved for humans, but it's essentially the same drug. It has the same mechanism.
That's true, yeah, and but fenbenzidol has been tested on humans that is not harmful in any way, and but even fenbenzidol now, when you go to you can't get it at a pet store. You have to get it through your veterinarian, and that requires a prescription. So when I went in to see the vet, they asked me,
not in the United States. You can buy it right from Amazon. You can also buy it directly from Alibaba in China.
Well, can you? Oh, okay, that's good to know.
Oh yeah,
that's
by the kilo.
Well, that's
100%
awesome.
Pure by the kilo. $40 a kilo.
Really? Well, that's good. A lot of people.
Yeah, it's very cheap.
Well, it was kind of funny though when I went in to see I had a veterinarian that used to come to my restaurant that I had, and she wasn't there when I went in there. Well, it was quite funny because I said I wanted to get this fenbenzidol, and they said, well, you need a prescription. How big or how much does your dog weigh? And I said, well, about 165 pounds. They're like, oh, that's a big dog. Like, they didn't know I was talking about me.
Yeah.
At any rate, I contacted the lady that owns the clinic, and she's been kind enough to order it for me and stuff like that. But it's great to know that you can get that at bulk and Amazon and stuff. And
Amazon's great. Amazon, I think Amazon has everything that I ever needed in my life.
Well, that's good. Yeah.
I don't think there's anything you can't buy on Amazon anymore.
No, true enough.
Which is crazy.
Sure. Well, thank you, Teri. Thanks very much for.
It's been my pleasure, Rob. You have a great day. Have a great weekend. And like I said, if there's anything I can do to help the cause, don't hesitate to reach out to me.
I will for sure. I'll be in touch with you real soon. Okay.
Be well and be safe.
Okay.
Take care. It's a pleasure.
Bye-bye now.
You too. Bye-bye.